Hello, good evening, everyone.
Hi, Maral.
Hello, Maral.
How are you?
Good evening.
We're doing well.
How's the weather in Texas?
It's nice, it's sunny, it's cool. It's right before it starts to get really hot.
Oh, very good. So, happy weekend, dear friends. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you very much, Luis, for your time. I'm so excited about your presentation. So, when you feel ready, please start and stage is yours. Please introduce yourself to our audience if it's possible.
Welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to meet you all. Thank you, Maral, for inviting me to your webinar. For those of you that don't know, Maral and I met through an online course through Stanford on how to design products using AI. And I'm excited to learn how she uses AI in her respective field and excited to share how I use AI in my field. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Luis Martinez, and I'm a product designer based in Dallas, Texas. For the past 10 years, I've leveraged a human-centered approach to designing software, understanding what people actually need before we design something and invest the time and resources. But in the last year, with the rise of artificial intelligence, I've been asking myself, how do I continue a process that is human being and introduce artificial while keeping the human centered? So today I'd like to share 5 ways in which I use artificial intelligence in my respective field during the design process. Let me share my screen. All right. Can everyone see my screen now?
Yeah, it was too quickly. We see your screen. This happened for the first time to me. Usually it takes some time.
Okay, great. So today I'd like to share 5 ways in which I use AI in the design process without sacrificing critical thinking, which is what makes the process human centered, our ability as humans to think critically and judge what an AI is telling us. I'm going to cover the 3 phases of the design process: the research phase, the define phase, and the create phase. And for every phase, there are things I do with artificial intelligence in order to expedite the process. I will be using a fictitious project to explain how you can use these tactics in a design process. Number one is interview guides. So, as a UX, as a product designer, I have to understand what are people's motives in order to design a solution for them. And we do this by conducting user interviews. It's to understand the why behind human behavior. To conduct the user interview, first, I must understand the topic. What are we going to interview about? What is the goal of the interview? And who is the audience? Who am I going to interview? Then I create an interview guide, which is composed of 3 parts: an introduction, a set of questions, and a conclusion. I check with my team to make sure that the questions are open-ended, non non-leading, non-biased, and specific to the topic so that I get the right answers within the time that I'm interviewing someone. And then finally, I confirm with my team that the questions are going to be are in within the research scope, and then go out and interview actual people. However, this process can be time consuming, but with AI, we can expedite the interview guide creation portion. And so the way to do this is by starting with a natural language prompt that gives AI context, your goal, what you're asking it to do, and how you want your response. So, for example, if I'm going to research about people in the healthcare system and I need an interview guide, I ask AI, as a researcher, I want to learn about the experience for new patients in the healthcare system in order to understand their needs. Create a 30-minute interview guide that includes an introduction, a set of open-ended, non-biased, non-leading questions that are within the research scope and a concluding statement. Format your response as introduction, interview questions, and conclusion. AI usually gives me a response in through a natural language processor that has an introduction, questions, and a conclusion. At this point, I don't take what AI gives me at face value, so I review with my team to make sure that the questions are what we're looking to do, and that's how you bring people into the loop in your AI process. I discuss with my team, we go over the questions. If these are the right questions, the next step is I go out and interview actual people to understand their needs before I'm designing a solution. And this is how I expedite the the research process with interview guys by asking AI to create them for me, and then I go out and interview actual people, but ensure to include my team within the loop so that we have critical thinking in the process. Number two is identifying high impact opportunities with jobs to be done. Now, for those of you that may not know Jobs to be done is a framework that allows us to identify high impact opportunities. For example, in the first step, I went out and I interviewed people about the healthcare system. Well, let's assume that we're identifying high impact opportunities.
Mhm.
Right. So, for example, usually the way this works is we identify what people need from research and then convert those needs into desired outcomes, which is a jobs to be done specific format. It's verb plus metric plus object of control plus contextual clarifier. Then we turn those desired outcomes into an importance and a satisfaction question in order to build an importance versus satisfaction survey. I go out and I give the survey to real people, and then I turn to the results in an opportunity map. However, this process can be time consuming. And with AI, we can expedite a big portion of the steps. We can go from converting user needs to creating the importance versus satisfaction survey within a few minutes. Here's how. So let's assume that we went out into the field and we conducted user interviews to understand people's needs, which was covered in the first step. And now we've identified different needs within the healthcare system that must be met in order to improve the experience of a person going through the healthcare system. To turn each user need into a desired outcome to create the survey, we create a natural language prompt. The natural language prompt asks AI that as a jobs to be done practitioner, I want to turn each user need listed below into a desired outcome formatted in the jobs to be done format with the verb, metric, object of control, and contextual clarifier. Using the word minimize because we're looking to minimize friction, looking to minimize pain for each step that the person is going through in the healthcare system, and use an ambiguous metrics so that we know that we're actually improving that need or not. Then for each one, create an importance and satisfaction question. In my prompt, I ask AI what to do, and I also give it an example of what I expect it to do. So for this example, I want it to create an importance and a satisfaction question, and I give it the different user needs I identified in my research. The result should be that for each user need, you get one importance and one satisfaction question. In this example is how important is it for the patient to minimize the time it takes to find a healthcare provider that accepts their insurance? And then the other question is how satisfied are they with their ability to find a local healthcare provider that accepts their insurance plan? You can take these questions and you can copy and paste them into a tool like SurveyMonkey, where it'll create a survey from questions that you simply paste. Once the survey is created, you give your survey to actual people. When you get the results back, you can use the jobs to be done formula to convert the answers to your survey into the importance, the opportunity map. This is what an opportunity map looks like. This shows you out of all the needs you've identified in your user research, which ones are the most important to people with the least satisfaction. And that's your high impact opportunities. It is if you have if you want to prioritize what to work on in design, you want to go for the things that are important to people and that they have the least satisfaction with. It's what your high impact opportunities are. This covers what you can do in the research phase of the design process, from interview guides for conducting user interviews to job to be done surveys, turning those needs into a survey to identify high impact opportunities. In our example, we've done the research, we've done the survey, and we identified the highest impact opportunity. Now it's time to turn that impact opportunity into a problem statement. In the design process, a problem statement is written as a question that starts with how might we, in order to invite creativity. A problem statement is the foundation of your solution. It is what your team is going to focus on to create a solution. To create a problem statement, you must prioritize your user needs. This is what you learn from research, and then convert the most important ones into a problem statement, review with your team, and vote on the best representation of the problem. However, this can also be time consuming, but with AI, we can expedite portions of this process, especially the one where we're converting user needs into problem statements. And the reason why this is important is because creating a how might we statement can be challenging. For example, uh, let's say that in our research, we identify that patients want to feel that the system remembers them. And and the details that they have already shared, they want to feel like a value partner. They don't want to start from scratch every time they show up at the doctor to fill out information again. They filled out this information online before getting to the doctor's appointment. But when you here in the US, when you get to the doctor's appointment, they ask you to fill out everything again on a paperclip. In our research, we identified that this is the uh, most important need with the least satisfaction to users. So how do we turn this into a problem statement? We could say, how might we improve the patient satisfaction? Which is a very broad way of trying to tackle a problem. So it might be too broad. There's too many options to improve the patient satisfaction. We could say, how might we replace clipboards with tablets? Well, that's too specific. A good problem statement includes the description of includes the persona, your user, the outcome, and a strong problem statement looks like this. How might we honor the time that a patient already spent filling out the forms at home so that their in-person arrival feels like a continuation and not a restart? We want a strong problem statement. And what AI can do is help us generate various problem statements. So with a natural language prompt, we can ask AI, as a researcher, I want to create a variety of how might we statements that best represent the user need below so that my team can vote on the best one. Create 5 different versions, each from a different angle. Use the following format. How might we plus verb plus user plus so that outcome. And then you give it the user need. The response is that your natural language processor will give you a variety of how might we strong problem statements. And at this point, I review with my team and we vote on which problem statement best represents the user need. This is how we can use AI to expedite the problem statement definition in the defined state of the design process. So far, We've done interviews, we've understand the needs, we've prioritized the needs with the opportunity map, and now we are focused on one problem statement to tackle. A challenge when designing is demonstrating to your team an illustration of the problem that people are having. And so this is where storyboards come into play. Storyboards are a comic strip that represents the experience of a person. It represents the problem that a person's having, and it's a good way to easily demonstrate what the problem you're trying to tackle. However, to create a storyboard, you first start with discussing with your team what is the experience you're going to illustrate. Then you break it down into six or less story scenes, and you sketch out each scene or use an image editing tool. Then you review with your team to ensure your storyboard is an accurate representation of the experience. However, this can be a very time-consuming process. This can take days or weeks, even if you're a great sketch artist or really good at editing images. But with AI, you can expedite this. You can expedite how you can break down your story into six scenes and create the storyboard. Here's an example. This is using two prompts. The first prompt is you're asking AI to break the story into six scenes. The story is when Jenny arrives at the doctor's office, she feels a sense of friction and frustration because she has to repeat the information she already provided. This creates the feeling that the healthcare system is disconnected and doesn't respect their time before the doctor even walks in. So I'm asking AI to take this story and break it down into six scenes and format them as scene number one and description of the scene. The AI should produce a list of scenes, and next you create a second prompt where you're asking your AI to create a storyboard using the scenes. You list out scene one, scene two, scene three, all the way to scene six. Now, for this, you want to make sure that the natural language processing can generate images. I've used in the past Microsoft Copilot, or you can use Google Gemini. With Google Gemini, you get this. So you describe the experience of a person, you tell it the stories, and now you're illustrating what is the problem that you're going to solve with your solution. So up to this point, we've done user interviews to understand the needs. We've done jobs to be done survey to focus on one need. We turned that need into a problem statement, and now we visualize the problem statement. And we've expedited every step using artificial intelligence. Now, for the last step is creating your design, creating an idea for your design. This is where in the design process, you're creating different versions, different solutions for the problem that you're solving. It's called design ideation. Typically, when you do this, when I do this in my work, I start with defining the core UI elements of the application, and then I create what's called a UI object map. I validate with my team, excuse me, that the object map is accurate and represents the app that we're trying to design. Then I create the designs and I review with my team to make sure that the design is headed in the right direction. However, this process can be time consuming, but with artificial intelligence, we can expedite this, especially if you have the right tools. We can expedite two parts of this process, defining the core UI elements to create the UI object map and then creating the design ideas. The first step is with a prompt that asks AI, as a product designer, I want to design a design an application based on the description below. Create a UI object map based on the object oriented UX, which is a framework from which the UI object map is created from. I give it the app description, use the information the patient already provided to build a shared agenda for the appointment, how it works, a short description of how the application works, and then I ask it to format my response with as a list with sub items. For example, object name, UI representation, attribute list, action list, relationship list. The response should be that AI gives you a UI object map. It gives you the patient, how it's represented in the user interface, the attributes, which is the contents that are included part of the patient. A patient has a full name, a date of birth, a patient ID, the actions that can be taken on a patient, the relationship between the patient and other components, the appointment, form submission, so on and so forth. This is your UI object map. Finally, you go into the tool Figma Make and you copy and paste your UI object map, and then you give it a prompt asking it to create the description of your app. Figma Make then will create a very realistic app based on the prompt you give it. And in this example, it's creating a process for the patient who arrived at the clinic. The patient now knows where they are in the process. They know that their forms have been reviewed and she doesn't have to refill those forms in. The next thing is to check her vitals and talk to the doctor. It is a one option on how to solve the problem of patients feeling like their time is not valued because they have to fill out the information that they filled out online before arriving at the doctor's office. This is how you can use AI throughout. This is how I use AI in the design process, from understanding users, prioritizing their needs, defining the problem, illustrating the problem with storyboards, and then creating solution ideas with Figma Make. Again, my name is Luis Martinez. I'm a product designer based in Dallas, Texas. I use a human-centered approach to designing software, and I've been experimenting in ways how to bring AI into a process, but maintain it human-centered with people at the core. Thank you, Maral. Thank you everyone for having me. It's been
Thank
a
you very
pleasure showing you, and I'll be sharing these slides soon.
Oh, thank you very much, dear Luis. Your presentation was very good, and I like the example you showed. I have one question. Do you usually work with the healthcare area, or maybe you can tell us about in which area do you usually work?
Yeah, so I've worked in different areas. Most recently, I've worked in the service industry, which is restaurants, helping restaurants understand what their customers are complaining about. For example, um, when restaurant guests fill out a survey and give feedback to the restaurant, we use artificial intelligence to review the feedback and understand how many customers are complaining about a specific problem. It could be that the bathrooms are dirty or the burgers don't taste very good.
Mhm.
This is most recently, this is where I've been working at, but I've worked in telecommunications, e-commerce, banking, and automotive.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe you will share a few of your works with our participants soon in our WhatsApp group, for example. We would like to see your work. Thank you very much again. I really liked your presentation. Now it's my time. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's look how quickly it would be. Mhm. Okay, so
Yes.
today I would like to share a few practical tips on how AI and more importantly should be used in the legal professions. When I was thinking how I going to explain such a big topic in a short complimentary webinar, I realized I needed a simple framework, so I decided to use a guide to use of artificial intelligence tools in law practice, which we developed together with Ankara Bar Association, Legal Information, Innovation and Technology Center as a reference point. I will share it in our chat group after the webinar. Lawyers are absolutely allowed to use the artificial intelligence, but, and this is the important part, just because something isn't prohibited doesn't mean it's risk-free. AI can be incredibly helpful, but it also comes with certain responsibilities and potential pitfalls that legal professionals need to be aware of. In fact, this concern is reflected in regulation as well. Under the first AI Act, certain uses of AI in legal context, especially where AI may influence legal outcomes or decision making, are considered high-risk AI system. That classification highlights exactly why lawyers need to approach these tools thoughtfully with clear professional judgment and ethical responsibility. In Türkiye, lawyers should use real artificial intelligence tools in accordance with attorneyship law. So the requirement is of great importance in terms of maintaining the quality of legal services and observing client rights. Therefore, lawyers need to have a solid understanding of both the advantages and the risk of technological tools. And as a client, you are absolutely allowed to ask your lawyer how AI is being used in your case. First, in the guide we prepared, we focus on the main risks that can arise from widely used AI tools and evaluated them under Turkish law. One key risk is information disorder. AI systems sometimes generate information that simply isn't true. Many of you may have heard that term hallucination. Am I saying right? Okay. So this happens when AI tool gives an answer that sounds confident and convincing, but is actually incorrect. Another issue is bias in training data. AI learns from large data, and if those data sets contain biases, those biases can appear in the results. In the legal field, this raises serious concerns about fairness in justice. For example, there are also risks related to confidential or sensitive data. AI tools might misinterpret such information, or in some cases may have been trained on data that should never have been used. For lawyers, this clearly raises concern about attorney-client confidentiality. In the guidance, we connected these risks to existing legal rules. For example, inaccurate AI outputs could harm legal proceedings via biased results, may conflict with the right to a fair trial, and use of confidential data could create ethical and professional responsibility issues. So let's move on. As we said, so another key point is transparency with clients. Lawyers and law firms should clearly inform clients if AI tools are used in providing legal services. And importantly, the lawyer remains responsible for the outcome. In short, today, a lawyer's professional duty is not only to understand what AI can do, but also to explain both its benefits and risks to clients. Open communication about AI and awareness of its limitation are becoming essential part of modern legal practice. So let me briefly connect all of this to the professional responsibility of the lawyers. In Turkey, the duties of attorneys, as I said before, regulated under the Turkish Code of Obligation and Attorneyship Law. In addition, lawyers must follow the professional ethic rules issued by the Union of Turkish Bar Association. These rules shape how lawyers practice, including how they use new technologies like AI. Let's look at a few key responsibilities and what they mean when AI tools enter the picture. First, confidentiality. Lawyers have a strict duty to protect client information. When AI tools are involved, this becomes especially important because many AI systems process large amounts of data. Sometimes that data can include personal or sensitive client information. So lawyers need to ask some important question. Is the system self-training? Does it store the information that is entered? Could that data be used later to generate responses for someone else? If the answer is yes, that could create risks for attorney-client confidentiality. That's why lawyers must take reasonable precautions when using AI tools, such as checking the platform security measures, understanding how data is stored, and before entering any client's information, maybe just don't enter their name, for example. Second, competence and duty of care. As we discussed earlier, AI system can sometimes produce very convincing but completely wrong answers. Those so-called hallucinations can be particularly risky in legal work. So the third is personal responsibility for the work performed. Traditionally, lawyers can delegate certain tasks to another licensed attorney. For example, if I have a case in Texas, I may transfer my case to another lawyer in Texas. But when I transfer my work to AI, just say, please write a certain work for me, I can't take responsible AI for the wrongs created in the as a result, for example. So we said that under current legislation in Turkey, artificial intelligence cannot act as a legal professional or independently provide legal services. That's why if something went wrong, the responsible is I am as a lawyer. Even through AI tools may help draft documents or summarize information, the responsibility for the final work, as I said right now, still belongs to the lawyer. In other words, if something goes wrong, the lawyer cannot say, well, that AI wrote it, for example. The professional responsibility remains with attorney handling the case. So now let's look at the accountability and transparency. As I mentioned it before, lawyers have an obligation to keep their clients informed about the work being done on their behalf. This obligation includes explaining relevant developments and providing information during the presentation, not just at the end of the case. And finally, there is the lawyer's duty to act in the best interest of the client. So the legal profession is traditionally conservative, and that caution exists for a reason. It protects clients. Even if technology offers new possibility, the lawyers must always ask one central question. Does using this tool truly serve the client's best interest? So let me wrap up with a few practical takeaways at the end. So first, protect confidentiality and personal data. Lawyers should be extremely careful when sharing any documents or information with AI tools. Second, watch for intellectual property issues. AI-generated content isn't always original, for example. Third, be transparent with clients. Fourth, always act in the client's best interests. So the key message is simple. AI can be powerful support tool for lawyers, but ethics, professional responsibility, and the protection of client right must always come first. If used careful and responsible, artificial intelligence can actually help strengthen the profession and support lawyers as the legal world continues to evolve. So thank you very much for listening to me. This was my presentation. So So, dear participants, thank you very much. It was my pleasure. Dear Luis, thank you very much. Your presentation was really good. I liked all examples you provide, especially you was right that we spend a lot of time at the doctors, for example, by uh, filling the forms again and again, and it is a really good solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm glad, and I hope everyone enjoyed the content. I've shared my slides on the WhatsApp channel. Reach out anytime. It was a pleasure being on your webinar. Thank you.
Okay, I hope we will do another webinar maybe in summer to discuss another side of the AI together again.
I love that. Thank you.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye bye,
Bye-bye. Thank you for the
everyone.
session. Bye-bye. Thank you so much. Have a great time.